So a couple of days ago, I did a talk on the French and Indian War. And part of that talk had this map in it, which is the British view of North America at the time of the French and Indian War. And every time I look at this map, I look at Pennsylvania and go, what? How? Tell me. So I decided, I guess I should take the time to figure that out. And I think I found the answer. The answer is in the shenanigans of the Susquehanna Land Company. It appears that between 1681 and 1776, Pennsylvania had a problem. First, there was the Mason-Dixon line, and it finally got fixed in 1767, and that gave Pennsylvania a little bit more. But notice that Pennsylvania claim that goes all the way down below Maryland. Now that's downright interesting if you want to know the truth. But don't forget the lower counties on Delaware were administered by Pennsylvania until 1776, where somehow miraculously it became a state. The lower counties. And then when you look in the northern part of Pennsylvania, into what is now New York, you see that Pennsylvania claimed most of western New York until 1774. And then Connecticut has claimed the in-between until 1786. And I just cannot forget Virginia claiming that little tiny corner on the western side until 1780. So we can see here how Pennsylvania went from that ugliness that's on that French and Indian War map to, by 1786, what it is today. But I'm sure that Connecticut did not give up that claim very easily. And notice as we go farther west, there's a piece of New York sold to Pennsylvania in 1792, and I honestly don't know what that's all about. That's something for me to look at, since truthfully I just noticed it. But there is Connecticut until 1800 on the Ohio side, and that looks like the Connecticut Reserve. So basically, Connecticut claimed everything to the west of it except that which was definitely New York. I'm surprised Connecticut didn't try to claim what Pennsylvania tried to claim until 1774. So there are some things out there that will be useful to you. This tiny little thing is the story of the Wyoming Valley, and it describes the conflict that occurred between Connecticut and Pennsylvania over these disputed lands in northern Pennsylvania and early settlement in the area. And we're talking Puritans, Moravian missionaries, numerous conflicts with Indians, negotiations, disputes between Connecticut and Pennsylvania over this territory, and a colonel by the name of John Butler. Those of you who know John Butler, he later in the Revolutionary War will be a loyalist captain that will eventually end up in Ontario after the war. Now there is a 3-volume set of books done by Donner Bingham Munger, and she had a role in Pennsylvania as chief of the Division of Land Records in the Pennsylvania State Archives. So she had an interest in this, and she created a database of these proprietors, settlers, and claimants. So it's a 3-volume set. And volume 1 is the proprietors. And this book provides an overview and a database of information about these proprietors or shareholders as found in the Susquehanna Company minute and account books. These volumes record deeds from the company to share purchasers and conveyances along with the chain of title. Each deed usually cites grantor and grantee residence, amount paid, size of the share transferred, location of actual real estate, execution and recording dates, and special comments. As informative as the account books are, they do not give a complete picture of actual settlers along the Susquehanna River at any one time. To understand that scene, you would have to consult a host of other lists. And she provides some of those other lists. One is Volume 2, which is the settlers. And she's basically merged 32 lists of settlers back together again into one database. The sources begin with a deposition recalling the names of 13 of the first Susquehanna Company settlers in 1762 and end with 1,150 names in a November 1801 petition to the United States Congress asking for additional consideration and relief. In between, the list range from the names of 31 of the first 40 present and arrested at Wyoming in March 1769 to a list of the proprietors of the first 5 townships in June of 1770 and tax lists from 1776 to 1780. So basically, each person named in a list, the database cites the date and place present. A lot of individuals appear on more than one list. So the third book is the claimants. And these were proprietors and settlers who claimed and received Pennsylvania title to their tracts. And this particular database drew on the Pennsylvania state land records and includes the names of those who drew lots in the certified townships, as well as chain of title to the claimant. Many drawers and claimants were original Susquehanna Company proprietors. Others were descendants of original proprietors, and their chain of title usually includes familial relationships. Several of the claimants were land speculators who bought lots from settlers who could not afford to become claimants. Now, there's an interesting book on the Ohio Reserve, but part of it deals with the westward expansion of Connecticut's claim. And of course, the claim in Pennsylvania will eventually disappear, but the claim in Ohio will remain for a while, till 1800. So this book will chronicle this expansion. It will talk about how Connecticut played a role in the region. It will look at Puritanism as a springboard to Connecticut's expansion. And it will include an account of the battle and massacre of Wyoming in 1778 and the flight through the shades of death. The history of the Western Reserve is also given with reference to its history and those kind of things. What we have in Pennsylvania, in the Wyoming Valley, is something called the Pennamite War. And the Pennamite War is the conflict that exists between Pennsylvania and Connecticut. So the Wyoming Valley book will talk about it. The Ohio Reserve book will talk about it. And we'll also talk about it is this book called The History of Wyoming. And I'm sorry it's not larger. But it is a history of the Wyoming Valley in Pennsylvania. You know, when I was a kid, I remember reading Buck Rogers, and Buck Rogers had a lot to do with Wyoming. And it took me a while to figure out that they didn't mean the state of Wyoming. They meant the Wyoming Valley in Pennsylvania. So if you've heard of the Wyoming Valley before, but haven't heard about it in this context, and you're old like me, it may be that you heard about it because of Buck Rogers. But what we have in the history of Wyoming is a series of letters from Charles Minor to his son William Penn Minor, Esquire. And it's a rather thick book, and it deals with native inhabitants, the Six Nations, Mohawks, Moravians, the efforts to Christianize Wyoming Indians, the controversy between Pennsylvania and Connecticut, the Susquehanna Company purchase, the First Pennamite War, Captain Nathan Ogden, the first settlers, women in Wyoming, Westmoreland, the Revolutionary War, and the Wyoming companies. So basically, what happens in the end of it all is that Connecticut creates the county of Westmoreland, and Pennsylvania creates the county of Northumberland, and they go all the way to the courts, and the courts find that in fact it's Pennsylvania, that this area does in fact belong to Pennsylvania, and pretty much the borders of Pennsylvania are defined at this point in time, except for that little piece in 1792 which is purchased. Still haven't figured out what that is. And then those Connecticut folks that have a valid claim and can prove it are able to stay, and those who don't have a valid claim are forced to leave, somewhat rather forcefully, on more than one occasion. And this may explain to you why all of a sudden you have people in a place and they disappear for a while and then they show up in New York. They might very well be some of these failed claimants in the Susquehanna Company in Pennsylvania. So I hope I haven't confused you too much. I'm pretty sure I've confused myself. But anyway, I'm now able to explain to myself why Pennsylvania looked like it did and why it looks like it does now. I have a good idea about Connecticut's involvement in Pennsylvania and how it ended. And this is Craig at Just Genealogy, ending another session of trying to figure out why things are the way they are. You all have a good time out there. I'll see you tomorrow.